Hi, I'm Jayreid. I'm a psychotherapist in San Francisco, California. And today I'd like to talk about making yourself your top priority after narcissistic abuse. So today's video is a bit of an extension on last week's video where I want to emphasize the importance of shifting the notion of where one gets to find what is needed to feel complete and whole from finding it externally to gradually, gently, and over time looking inward in order to find it. And I found that this notion of who gets to be your priority is a useful one in making that shift. So to just set the stage, quickly, an infant born into this world in a very literal way doesn't have the capacity to, in essence, be their own priority. They really need to receive that from the way they're being treated by their parents. Let's say a 3-year-old boy who, let's say, gets distressed because a sibling took his toy. Well, he's not going to have the emotional regulation capacities yet to say, my sibling will bring the toy back in about 5 minutes. I'll just play with these other toys. It'll be fine. No, they're going to get really upset. This is an unfairness being visited upon this child, and likely or may cry and express that distress. And it's the parent noticing that child's state, wanting, in essence, the best for that child, and just that parent having concern and care for that child, who's going to come over and soothe the child, reassure him, hold him, have contact with him if needed. And as those kinds of experiences accrue enough of the time, then that child gets to, in essence, put that within himself and begin to treat himself in sort of a seamless way and an endorsed way by the parent, in the same way that, in this example, the parent's treating him. In the case of a child born to a narcissistic parent, what that child tragically meets is that, in the midst of trying to look outward to get what is needed, and really is needed at that point in life to feel complete, he or she's instead met with having to make that narcissistic parent his priority. So he learns quickly and troublingly, I'm not the priority to this parent, and in order to kind of cope with my situation, I've got to make this parent my priority. And what that can result in is this experience of a sequence of, I can only be my priority once I make the other person feel prioritized. Today's video, I hope, is going to offer a way of thinking about this in recovery to sort of cut out that middle process of, in essence, to be able to think about ways to be the priority to yourself without having to do something or attend to someone else first. So attend to someone else first. Okay, but before I get into that, I'm really excited to announce the launch of my online course, and it's titled Recovery from Narcissistic Abuse. I'm excited because this has been in the works for quite a while now, and it combines easy to follow explanations for how narcissistic abuse can impact one's psychology, both in childhood and into adulthood, and then particularly offers some concrete tactics for structuring life in a way that supports your authentic self and protects your life and quality of life from narcissistically abusive people and experiences. Without further ado, let me show you the page, and I'll take you through some of the features of the course. Okay, so here we are on the course's webpage. I'll put the web address in the description below. But in brief, what the course does is organize this strategy for recovery around 3 components. And the first is making sense of what happened. So, understanding the psychology of the narcissistic abuser, how the deck was likely stacked against you in that situation, and especially how all of this was not your fault. The second component is gaining distance from your narcissistic abuser, whether that's psychological, emotional, and sometimes physical distance. Distance is required for your system to know it's now safe to proceed in your recovery. And I devote a lot of focus on some of the internal obstacles that can emerge when trying to create distance with one's narcissistic abusive partner or family, particularly around the ideas of shame or guilt, sense of sort of feeling like I'm the bad one for trying to put distance. And the third component is living in defiance of the narcissist's rules. And I think with enough distance and understanding of what happened, that one system can feel safe enough to begin challenging, the premise that you're undeserving or defective, by making choices in your life that reflect other more compassionate beliefs about yourself. And so in brass tacks, just what is the course comprised of? Well, there are 8 videos and over 4 hours of new content that is really focused around these 3 components of recovery. And on the webpage, it really goes into depth about the content of each video. So if you're interested, I encourage you to kind of go through and scroll here. And then if you determine that you'd like to get either more information about the course or you're ready to purchase, you can click on any place in this document here. You can click on that 3-pronged strategy, and it takes you to the course page where it shows you the price and tells you more information about it. And so what you get in the course is, as I mentioned, the 8 videos, over 4 hours of new original content, some supporting diagrams in PDF format, and a spreadsheet to complete a particular assignment on finding safe people in your life. And then I think what I'm really excited about is a moderated discussion forum for each of the modules or videos, where students in the course can share with and support each other around the material covered in each lesson or module. And just to show, there's a lot of ways to get to this page. You can go to online courses here, you can go to course homepage, or of course you can click on this banner if that's there too. The reason I'm really excited about this is that a lot of the time in the course of posting these YouTube videos is individuals would contact me with some interest in working in individual therapy, but for good reason. It just wasn't manageable to pay for ongoing individual therapy given the structure of fees. So my hope is with this course is that to lessen the cost of a single session of individual therapy, one gets a lot more content and can hopefully take some of this information and profitably apply it in your own life. And my hope is really experience the course as a companion in your process of recovery from narcissistic abuse. Okay, so I'll be talking more about the course in future videos, but encourage you to take a look if you're interested. Okay, so back to this notion of making yourself your top priority after narcissistic abuse. When the kid, comes into the world expecting to be the parent's priority, but instead has to make the parent that kid's priority, then that's a very troubling revelation to the kid. And of course, I don't mean he or she is having a conscious thought that this is troubling, but just experiences it procedurally that the focus needs to be on the parent or else. For the child, that parent doesn't have it in them to make the child the priority. So I think that there's a few things a child needs to do in order to kind of get through such a situation. First, he has to override his or her own expectation to be the parent's priority. The kid has to hide the pain of not getting what is needed and hide it from him or herself, and certainly from the parent. And next, the child has to create a part of him or herself that functions to make that parent the priority. And I think what can happen in order to kind of accomplish this task of enduring the pain of not being the parent's priority and then making that parent the priority in the face of all this inner pain, is a sort of like bargain with the self that, if enough attention gets paid to the parent, maybe then eventually the kid will be the parent's priority. And that can be an important strategy of hope in such a frankly hopeless situation for the child at that time. Once that sort of bargain kind of extends past, the time in life when it really is important to be the priority of somebody else, that sort of bargain can create a feeling that where where making oneself your own priority is sort of a distant second to finally getting this wished for experience of being another's top priority. It can create this sort of like, I will be my priority once I become someone else's priority. So how does all this kind of impact the healing and recovery process? The objective can be, instead of I will be my priority once I become someone else's priority in that sort of bargaining manner that was needed earlier, it gets to be shifted to I will be my priority, period. There doesn't need to be a sort of if-then thing of like, if I can be prioritized by someone else first, then I can be a priority to myself. And there's, I think, good news and bad news to this shift. The good news, I think at least, is that once one has kind of gotten through childhood in an objective sense, and when I say objective, I mean with full respect that it may very well not feel this way whatsoever. But so I'm really saying, just objectively stated, that one has all one needs to prioritize oneself. I also want to emphasize that that is not a reason to criticize oneself, that it doesn't feel that way for very good and come by honestly reasons, which I'll talk about. The bad news, I think, in this shift is that the experience of being another person's main priority did not happen and will never happen in this kind of way for the survivor of narcissistic abuse. And that can involve a lot of grief, sadness, having to revisit and kind of maybe even tolerate, hopefully in a mindful way, some of the feelings of being abandoned that really this sort of like failure to be your parent's priority can amount to. It is, I think, a form of profound emotional abandonment that likely had to be endured and survived. As that happens, though, as this kind of right to just I will be my priority, period, get some traction, over time you get to reclaim the right, to not only, be the priority, main priority to yourself, but for also that to feel valuable to you, that your own sort of attention matters most to you. And I think there's good reasons, as I mentioned, why that wouldn't feel the case to begin with. And particularly, during narcissistic abuse, one often feels devalued because that's how, one's being treated in relationship to the narcissist, who kind of needs to artificially feel superior. And in order to share reality with that narcissistic person, one has to sort of identify with the feeling of being devalued that the narcissistic parent, in this case, cannot tolerate feeling about themselves. So a form that can often take is that whatever I think, whatever sort of care I minister to myself is not as valuable as what the parent holds, or later in life, it can be what the other person holds. But I think that as this understandable wish to be someone else's main priority gets surrendered in favor of working towards being, your own top priority, then I think what's really cool that happens is one's sense of the value of being your own priority really increases. And I think that's part of this sort of like taking out that clause, right? Of just the, instead of I will be my priority once I'm someone else's priority, instead I will be my priority, period. As that's practiced, again, I mean, like, it can take a lot of time. And so would encourage so much patience and compassion in doing this, as I think is, I hope to emphasize across all these tactics that are suggested in these videos, that none of them are silver bullets. They all are, in essence, processes that can be initiated and often, require time, patience, forgiveness, in fact, with oneself, as fits and starts will naturally occur. But anyway, as that occurs, then the experience of like, oh, my own attention to myself is kind of what I seek the most. What do I think about how I'm feeling? What do I need? How can I care for myself in this moment? And I think the beautiful part of this is that, it is a pretty tragic to not have received this early in life when it was needed. And the suffering involved by not getting that can't be overstated, I don't think. But as that is sort of relinquished as sort of the main goal, to kind of reclaim being someone else's priority and then getting to be your own, but rather sort of insisting I'm going to be my own priority to myself. It can create an experience of both being with oneself and being with others that feels much more, in a way, paradoxically nourishing. The experience of being around others while being kind of attendant to oneself can feel much less fraught, because the job of feeling like you're the top priority is being undertaken within, and hopefully with other safe people in one's life, that's being done on their side too. And so what it means to come together with people is something that is more complementary of one another's inner worlds, as opposed to having to offer a sort of salvation that was missing before. Well, thank you again for all of your support on this channel. Again, I'm really excited to post this online course. And I look forward to posting again next Sunday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Take care.